the artists who are here have with each other after their performances in the bar or between performances when they're hanging around waiting for something to happen. Often those are very interesting and insightful moments. So it's not perfect in terms of a way of providing that larger public access to that kind of relationship with the artist, but that's the goal. So we're going to try not to be too formal here. But I will introduce Jess Sash, who the collective invited to moderate today's discussion. I didn't know Jess before last week, but I did some internet research, and the rest of several members of the collective said, that's who we should get to moderate this panel. And indeed, after I did the research, I thought, yes, they are awesome. So I'm sure we're in great, capable hands today, and I'm going to turn over the floor to you now. Thank you.
I'm really excited to be up here. As much as this is a fancy artist panel, I also want to acknowledge and censor access to this space. So I'm sure many folks in the audience also have various disabilities and access needs, including all of us up on the panel. So if anyone is having any difficulty hearing and wants to sit closer to the front, feel free to orient yourself. Also, I want to observe the space as not having any need to perform any kind of social etiquette. If you need to get up and stretch and move around, or you prefer to sit on the floor, please, feel free to do that. Okay. So before I get into the questions that I have for these wonderful artists, I was hoping that each of them might take some time to kind of give you a bit of a personal reflection on each of their practices, whether or not you want to use visuals to do that. Starting with Vanessa?
A personal reflection?
Well, like, instead of a bio, just kind of like, I guess, what motivates your practices, I suppose. Mm-hmm. It doesn't even necessarily have to answer the title of the panel.
Okay. I think the line that I like best from my bio/artist statement is I'm interested in thinking about what defines our bodies physically and culturally. And I think that continues to be a theme in most of my projects. My body is important, and I'm thinking about how it relates to other bodies, other social conditions, other histories, and I want to make those links and think about those ideas.
I guess I'm here today primarily talking about my interest in the taboo body in performance, or the body as a marked site. Because I'm a person with a socially taboo body, regardless of my disabilities, visible or invisible, I'm really interested in the fact that when I go into the performance space, and even when I'm, just in public, that that social taboo is read on my body, and it's read into the content of my work. No matter what the work is meant to be about. Sometimes my work is about that subject. It's about my taboo body. It's about my relative failings, my social failings, my inability to live up to social expectations. And sometimes it's not. So my practice sort of bounces back and forth between being really situated in that marked site and wanting to create work, even performance, where that really specific marked nature is made invisible. And I've theorized several different ways of making performance where that's possible, and hopefully I'll be able to talk to you about that today.
And do you mind speaking about the pieces that you each have in the festival? Unfortunately, due to the scheduling, I have senior and Cindy with Vanessa in your performance of last Thursday, menstrual accessory.
Yeah. So I performed menstrual accessory, which I have here. And this is my menstrual accessory outfit. So menstrual accessory is a convenient solution to all your period state problems. It is trendy, fashionable, and desirable, unlike your actual period, which is dirty, ugly, and uncomfortable. And so I'll just show you how it works. You're going about your day, you've got your, big panel, it's really important, and you get a stain. I'm reliving this stress right now. Anyway, but it's all going to be okay because I have menstrual accessory. So you just apply the color to the stain, covering it with a much prettier color. It's really dazzling camouflage. Some more. I like to add polka dots. This is kind of my signature look. Everyone will develop their own. So this is a kind of smaller version of the performance. I showed some slides, and I suggested that this is a great product for Hillary Clinton. I talked about some other advertisements for menstrual products and the problems I see with them and why menstrual accessory is better. We talk about, get some personal testimonials, people telling their stories of times when they really could have used menstrual accessory. So it's kind of a bit of an infomercial or motivational talk.
And I'm here presenting a work called Crash Pad. I'll talk about it as it's meant to be seen, although I think a lot of you in the audience have been following along on Facebook and know that the very important prop that I need for performing the work is missing, so I'll be doing a slightly modified version of that performance here. So Crash Pad is about my reliance on medications, and as a person with disability, that the relationship that I've developed over a long period of time that I think is very common to anybody in our society that relies on medicine and the medical system in order to function as good, productive members of our society. So the work is, the sculptural object is a bed that's designed to look like a pill packet, a little blister pack, the kind that you either push the pill up through the foil or peel the foil back and take out the pills. So it's about 7.5 feet by 7.5 feet square, and it rests on the little divot that the pill sits in, so it rocks like a cradle or like an uncomfortably imbalanced rocker of some sort. And then there's a mattress in the middle which approximates the pill, and I use the bed to move on, sleep in, to comfort me and rock me to sleep, and to sort of wobble around on. So it's meant to be a movement piece more than anything else, but what I'll be presenting is going to be something quieter and stiller because that object won't make it here in time. And what the work really is about for me, other than what you see formally visually, is the fact that as a person in a body of size, let's say as a fat woman, I'm used to performing as what we in the fat activist scene call a good fatty, which means that I'm expected to demonstrate that I am a good and healthy person in order to sort of survive our neoliberal moral imperative towards health world. So as an artist, what that means for me is that when I perform, I need to do things that are taxing on my body. I need to prove that this is something I can do, that I'm happy to push myself to the limit. And I've done that over several years, relatively unintentionally, unconsciously, always doing things that I'm really excited to do, but making a giant mask out of myself. And maybe I'll have a chance to show you some pictures, and going on marathon length walks, and building a plexiglass box that's many, many hundreds of pounds, and walking around it and pushing it around, doing things that people can look at and say, oh yes, she's working very hard. She is a hard worker. She is a good fatty. And I think there have been so many ramifications on my body as a result of performing that way for so long, that what I've decided to do now is try to make work that responds to the needs of my body on any given day, and that very explicitly resists that impulse to try and do more, do better, be productive, be the best I can, and in fact just let people see where I'm at and do what I can do, what I'm capable of, what my body will allow, and still allow that to be rigorous and interesting and productive performance.
That's great. Thank you. That actually touches on one of the questions I had, and that is about our collective identities. So I was thinking about, like, when performing disability, how do your other identities feel present or not present? And that can include marginalized identities, but just while you were talking, I was thinking also to the identity of the artist. And the idea of when you're talking about performing as like a good fatty, I thought too about how there's that pressure to perform artists often at the cost of wellness, or at the cost of a pace that would be a disabled pace, in order to push against precarity of work and sustaining an artistic presence. I really,
Respond first. I think I think all artists sort of feel that pressure to do enough, to be seen, to be performing enough or making enough. And of course, I show up here, my bed is missing, and so right away I'm thinking, what can I do that will be enough? What can I do that will satisfy people's urge for my performance to be present? What can I do that will earn me the money that I'm supposed to be making here as a professional? And we've talked about that around the festival a little bit too, like what happens when an artist doesn't get their visa and so can't be here. It's no fault of their own. Like, there's all this, like, you have to unpack this guilt and pressure and all that. And of course, talking about the marked body, because my interest is specifically in the taboo body and in the fat body, and invisibly disabled body, that doesn't mean that I don't recognize other bodies as marked as well. Every woman that performs has to deal with the fact that her performance is read as a woman performing. Every person of color that performs, their work is read as a person of color performing. And that's why in my work I've tried to theorize ways that we can sort of skirt those issues. If I don't want to make work about the fat body, there are ways that I can hide my body in the work, that I can engage other people to perform the work in my place. Because as much as work about identity is important, is essential, I don't think it's fair that we all must be tied to those identities and to be expected to make work that responds to those really loaded identities.
Not a question. from the audience.
Oh, sure.
Sorry, I'm having a hard hearing and having a hard time hearing. I'm just wondering if somebody could just repeat the question before one of the
Ironically, I
others
can't hear
answers.
you. What?
Just couldn't hear you.
Oh, right, yeah, no, I was just wondering if somebody can repeat the question before they answer.
Oh, repeat the question that I asked?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time.
Is it better if I'm talking like this?
Yeah.
Okay.
that would be-
I kind of like standing up anyway. That's no need. Fine. What did I ask? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, if anyone else is hard of hearing, I'm hard of hearing, like, yeah, feel free to reorganize.
I can hear Jeff. Sure?
Yeah, I'll just project. But if it still isn't loud enough, let it know. So the question to both artists, the question to both performing disability. The question to both. I also thought it was hilarious that I got off the streetcar at Able Street. Okay. Anyways, the question to both artists was kind of on the heels of what Cindy had already been discussing about performing as good fatty, and which connected itself to a question that I'd already set aside, which was when performing with disability, how do your other identities feel present or not present? And I included other overlapping marginalized identities, but also the idea of being an artist as an identity, and thinking specifically about the ways in which, even as disabled artists, in order to kind of do the work of being an artist, we often push beyond our faculties and wellness as a means of kind of, performing the artist at the cost of, actually performing disability. And sometimes those blend together too. Anyway. And so, but you were able to hear Cindy's response to that? Okay.
Yeah.
I think that one of the experiences of a multiple identity that informed this work was being in spaces, indigenous spaces that have different cultural codes and understanding around menstruation, and just seeing the a contrast and having because there was a space that was different. I guess being able to kind of see, it allowed me to kind of see the construction of, what a menstruating body means more clearly. That kind of both situations are kind of, not necessarily innate, right? They've been built to mean certain things. So I was interested in thinking about those processes and kind of playing with the idea. And I really liked what you said about work and being productive, and I'm trying to perform. A kind of entrepreneur, a kind of, I wear a jacket, I'm trying to be really professional, and a lot of that kind of came out as having a desire to be more professional and to, be successful and to work hard, and then thinking about, the things that get in the way, right? And, for one of those, things is I have to, manage a body that leaks. And thinking about the time and energy that is put into managing that, wanting to make that visible.
I want to ask you more about your choices in attire and the kind of symbolism, I think, for both of you in materiality and how that connects to costuming a body and a body with various identities. during your performance, you had visuals that included photos of you at an airport, which I thought was interesting, thinking about, yeah, if you have those, that'd be great, about your performance and about performing disability and like the suggestion towards a passport. And you definitely seem to make a nod towards whiteness as well, in the context of, yeah, so I don't know if you can expand on that, like just thought processes around like color and even just the structure of what you're wearing. You're not just wearing like white, you're wearing a very rigid like white material.
Yeah, I guess one of the I like to wear the outfit, but one of the things that limits my wearing of the outfit is that it's pretty uncomfortable. You know, the heels are not uncomfortable. Like I couldn't wear this all morning because I wanted to walk places, and I'm not comfortable walking in heels, or long distances in heels. And yeah, you know, and white gets dirty really quickly. So I found myself like going to a dry cleaner for the first time, and you know, kind of doing other, yeah, like going to a dry cleaner, or you know, taking a cab, or you know, changing at different times, because kind of, and I don't think I really pull it off. I don't know. I bought a lot of this at like a secondhand store, with you know, and you know, I don't know if it like fits quite properly, and but I think that for me plays into, right, the idea that there is some kind of ideal woman, some kind of ideal person, ideal professionalism that people are trying to achieve, and there's always, you know, another product that you could buy, you know, that maybe it would help you get there. So what I enjoy about this is that there's, you know, clearly an attempt to fit into a category, but I like the places where it doesn't, you know, quite work. You know, I'm like really self-conscious with my belt. We got a little scratch. There's just, you know. But I think when you're performing, and I can also imagine like if you were to work in an office and you are, you know, in your life performing a profession that you need to work that way, right? These little things become, you know, things that really stress you out. But we have the solution, right, which is menstrual accessory. It's just let everyone know it's all a performance, and can just be distracted with a lot of color.
I like that idea of like conceptualizing an office space, like the idea of like, performing J. Crew. Yeah, thinking how that happened.
In my own work, I think about clothing a lot, and I make a lot of work that's about clothing. I think more recently, thinking about the moral imperative to productivity and how that's reflected by what we wear is really important. So, you know, uniforms and performance, even when it's not specifically uniform, like thinking about performance of persona and how that is reflected in the work that I make, and how that is also reflected in the clothing that I wear when I travel to festivals, the clothing that I wear to attend art events, the clothing that I wear around the home when no one can see me. I think what I'm going to be wearing for this performance is very much about being in the home and relaxing, and not being seen by other people, although it's a very curated set of clothing that was purchased specifically for this performance so that I could be seen to be performing that very well. I really love that that what I've seen lately in terms of casual wear, what we wear out on the street, what most people wearing out on the street when they're dressed down, when they're playing dressed down, when they're playing like don't want anyone to see them, is actually like has shifted from I don't know, sloppy t-shirts and whatever to active wear, right? When we go out and don't want anyone to see us, we look like we've been working out, we've been working hard, we've been running or doing yoga. On our days off, we need to be seen to be productive in a very, very physical way. And I think that's just fascinating. I'm absolutely repelled in my own style of dress from anything like that. And it's because I don't ever want to be seen to be trying to sort of play that person. As much as I want to be some days a good fatty, as much as I want to be a productive member of society or to be seen that way, I never want to be seen as a person who's aspiring to that kind of physical health.
Yeah, you bring up something interesting, thinking about who we are as artists, like in our acting work, and then who we are outside of that in terms of performing ourselves, and for certain body embodiments, how there isn't the same variety of choice, I suppose, in what we can perform safely and legitimately. I'm thinking about like really annoying Diana Greenland quotes on Tumblr and stuff around like normcore. When normcore surfaced, or the idea of it, and like quotes like overly simplified feminist quotes that were like, dress however you want. And it's like, well, okay. Like the idea that certain bodies with other layers of abjection on them already, like if I showed up in like leisure clothes, marked already with disability, in all likelihood I then also become physically poor, and how that threatens, not just, I guess, like how legitimate it is to see me, having a seat at the table, or having a practice as an artist, but also like, inherently my safety in that regard. So, yeah, thank you for that comment. But I'm curious to know how much participation and audience factors into both of your works, I guess, specific to like, I guess how disabilities perform.
I think the way that I'm still working and finding the different ways that people can participate with menstrual accessory. So in the formal context, when I did the performance last week, I kind of did the formal presentation, and then I began to open up the conversation to ask for input on pricing, and get a bit of a conversation. I also bring pre-stained underwear for people to use the product, kind of test it in product demonstrations. So I like that. In that, I like that people, handle an object that has been like worn and stained, which I think creates a bit of like an intimacy, and then it becomes really fun because you're coloring with really bright colors, and you kind of forget about the taboo or the awkwardness of holding someone else's underwear, and you just delight in a rainbow of menstrual representation. And you can also participate by purchasing the product, which is there to mimic the capitalist structure of purchasing to make everything better, and then there's the people who see me on the street or in passing, and particularly, I mean, it happens pretty much everywhere I go, but it also happened at the airport that, you know, like going through security and, you know, the person who takes my passport, you know, leaves her like post and like runs around later to just, you know, make sure I'm okay and, you know that I have a stain on my pants. And so that happens a lot. And sometimes people are like, do you know? But also it matches your shoes. So some people start to pick up on in the public, pick up on the cues that maybe something is a little artsy is going on.
In my own work, I think basically all of my performance is participatory or at least interactive in some way. And very early on in my practice, I realized that I need to approach the audience as equal participants in my work. Even if the work isn't participatory, if I can't approach the audience members as equals in what I'm doing, then it just doesn't work. So my art is never something that I think of as a gift I'm giving the audience, and I never think of it as something that I am trying to instruct or teach the audience. Generally, my work is something that I'm curious about, and I bring it to the audience hoping that somebody else is as curious enough about it to want to explore it with me. I wouldn't ever make work that is about, okay, you do this and then I do this and then there's the art. So my work isn't participatory in a way that a lot of people are familiar with. And like, I'm here, and if you choose to interact with me, then something will happen. I can't feel condescending in a way that I feel condescended to in work that I have seen. And so a lot of my work is confusing and quiet in that people don't know what they're supposed to do if those people are used to approaching art where somebody tells me what to do and then I decide if I want to do it or not. Also, because I'm really hyper aware of my own body's needs, not only as an artist but an audience member, my appreciation for any performance that I see is absolutely inversely proportional to the amount of pain I'm in when I'm experiencing it. And in my work, I don't want to cause people pain, so I try to present work in such a way that doesn't expect people to sit in uncomfortable chairs for long periods of time, or put them in any sort of position that asks them to do something that I'm not comfortable myself doing. Because part of that approaching the audience as equals is respecting that everybody else's bodies have needs and limitations like my own that I can't necessarily predict.
I'm really interested in about the space that you were talking about curiosity and creating a space of curiosity and exchange between the audience and yourself. And I guess I'm just wondering more about how that, in my experience, it can be really fruitful and it can also be really challenging to try and bring people to a place where they're, willing to work with you or willing to collaborate or have that kind of exchange. Do you have any, I guess you kind of spoke about some kind of like strategies for how to get people there in terms of comfort. Are there any other ways that you do that?
Yeah, I guess I don't feel the need to get people anywhere, and I don't have any suggestions for other people in terms of what they could do in their practice in order to facilitate that. In my work, almost every time I perform, I'm me doing what I'm doing in a really specific or maybe bizarre context. But because I'm just me doing what I'm doing, I'm prepared to meet people where they're at doing what they're doing, which is attending a performance or walking down the street and encountering something strange, and then we can meet each other in that place. But I just personally can't conceptualize like, okay, you press this lever, you know, pull this thing or push this thing, and that makes me do this, and then you've made the art. And I feel that way very much anytime I try to conceptualize a performance that's interactive or participatory. So I always end up falling back on, okay, this is me and I'm wearing a giant mascot costume of myself and I'm going to attend a festival, or this is me and I have a plexiglass box and I'm going to walk around in it. This is me and I'll be sleeping in the gallery this week. And let's see what happens.
It's really interesting thinking about this term that me and Vanessa coined, interdependence, thinking about what you're saying about negotiating curiosity with an audience with inherently what certain bodies, disabled bodies in particular, need to negotiate around the myth of any body being independent of another, and like negotiating collective care and needing help as a means of like choices that bodies make in order to get needs met in a context that's trying to drive towards a capitalist myth of independence, and that to be a successful body you are self-sustaining, which inherently is, you know, a deceptive thing. So it's interesting, like while you're talking about performativity in art and how to negotiate that curiosity with an audience, I feel like it mimics in a way performing disability, like in a way that's where we fail, I suppose, in order to gain access in that regard. Even negotiating the space as we were setting it up and folks not being able to hear and needing to move seats, I think requires performing that messiness, I guess. I was at a conference in 2012 at the University of Edinburgh, and the theme of the conference was monstrous embodiments. I was the only artist present, but it was really interesting. And there were two keynotes that were given. The first was by the Godfather herself, Rosemary Garland Thompson, who's written a lot about academically about the stare and the gaze, and she gave this pathological history of disability. She used a lot of visuals. She talked about state-sanctioned violence. She gave contextualizations within eugenics and World War II, and it was really compelling. And then following her was Margaret Shildrich, who boldly started her plenary. I to this day I still think about this. Who boldly started her plenary saying she wouldn't be using any visuals, which I thought in the moment was rather shocking given the theme of the conference, the idea of monstrosity. Disability itself just seemed to so heavily rely on the visual of the body. But she followed it by saying to represent something is to negate all other representations. And what I thought about at the time, as an artist who'd been chugging along, just taking photos of myself in various enactments of performing my own identity, I was like, wow, what the hell? Like the idea that in this pressure to depict my own body, to make visible the presence of disability, I was also representing myself as disability in a limited way. So I was thinking about that this morning and wondering if both of you could perhaps, I guess, reflect on the presence of your body in your work, and I guess how you negotiate that, whether that's something you do politically, whether that's something you feel a pressure to do in order to engage with the very idea of disability. I know that's a big one, and I told you a whole story about it. Anyway, good story.
I guess what I'm
It's kind of hot here.
Right in front of me, go ahead.
I just myself. My inspiration was Barnett Newman.
Oh yeah, give it.
Yeah.
See the.
Can everyone see? Sorry, access is very
Just a little.
I guess in terms of my body is very physically able, and it's very physically able, and I'm talking about this process of menstruation, which isn't, which so many people go through, and I don't think I would define it as a disability. I mean, it's certainly not defined that way legally, but it is a way that people have to negotiate in the world. But I think where my experience with disability in this work intersects is the idea of wanting to meet a standard and to perform a particular at a particular level or in a particular way. So I'm kind of flaunting and demonstrating this one potential failure of having people see that I bleed, but at the same time I'm actually really it was one of the things I was most nervous about was actively hiding that I have a cognitive disability, and that remembering all the things to say is super hard. And what are some of the other things? Just having my artist statement, not have errors, spelling errors in it, different memory in this context. I don't remember anybody's names, not anybody's, but it's very difficult to remember who I'm, the names of the people I'm meeting, where I'm going, those little details. So yeah, in the performance, I'm kind of actively showing us, this one thing, but there's the presence that I'm not talking about.
Before we come to you, Cindy, I also been thinking about, and I don't know if it's something you thought that you chose menstruation. Menstruation is definitely connected to the disabled body, but what I also, and Lincoln, but it also got me thinking about something heavily connected to disabled body, and that's incontinence. And I don't know if that's been a meditation on, I guess it has overlap and difference in that regard. Mm-hmm. Also smell connected to menstruation and that.
Yeah.
And perhaps what you're discussing, having a relative physical ability and how perhaps the appearance of embodiedness and the presentation of religion, how that might factor differently versus a body that appeared very disabled, whatever that means. I don't know.
Yeah. And working with my body, this is the presentation I've worked with, and with as if the work continues, it would be interesting to think about what would this presentation look like on other bodies. And yes, in the conversations I have, people have brought up other uses, incontinence, or I had one woman say I don't menstruate anymore, but every time I laugh I pee, so this could also be really good for me. And so I like that idea that it could be a colorful hiding of whatever you want it to be.
Well, is it okay if I show a few pictures to talk about? I already touched a little bit on the presence or absence of my body thing that I work with a lot. Partly because I'm also a curator and I like to think about ideas and then instead of making work, actually curating exhibitions.
Yeah, with your curatorial work, that question might factor in differently about whether or not your specific body is present because as a curator, generally that's not the case.
Yeah. So one of my first
Everyone
performances.
who uses sight can see that picture.
So I started making work in which my body was extremely present and visible and in fact put on display, as it were. I'm going to zip through things really fast while I talk, if that's all right, in lieu of a video. And I was able to interact with people because of the design of this box. I wasn't meant to be specifically nude in this performance. It was just really, really hot in there all the time. So I ended up taking off layers. And then I started doing performance where the presence of my body wasn't actually important at all, and making objects that were stand-ins for the body or were performance residues. So this is a project called One Mouthful. One Mouthful, where I chewed up mouthfuls of things and spat them out into paper. Sometimes my body is present in a sort of offhand way where it's not the focus of the work, but is more conceptual. Sometimes the work is about my body in aesthetics. I had all my body hair removed, so I didn't feel as though I was the one performing. It was really the esthetician who was performing, but she was performing on and around my body, and so that's the actual subject of the work. But I've hired others to perform for me in this piece. I had telegrams sent to exhibition openings that I couldn't attend or that I was actually attending. I'm just going to flip through things and not talk about all of them. I make opportunities for the audience to perform the work so that I don't have to be there at all when it's not about my body. And then sometimes again, flipping back to being very much about the body. Fashion plate, I asked audience members in Toronto to make clothing for me. And then one of my most well-known works that really is started me thinking about the body very specifically and where I've gone with performance since then. Personal appearance, where my body is extremely present, extremely on display, and yet completely hidden from the audience at the same time. And in that work, I just went about my daily business. So here I am at a performance festival in Finland at the bank trying to get paid my artist fee. They actually paid me. You can see my driver's license on the table. But in this work, I was very much stuck in performing that good fatty. It's absolutely torturous in that costume. And I did things like modeling for life drawing classes, attending furry conventions. Here I was actually running a marathon, the Puyo Hill 3-day, a 3-day marathon up the side of a mountain. Anyway, I think that I'll stop there in terms of talking about that. The presence or absence of the body in particular, but my thesis work specifically was about the absence of the artist's body. The missing body, yeah, where I theorized 4 different ways that artists can perform and yet be absent, their bodies be absent from the work. Creating objects as stand-ins for the artist, hiring other people to perform the work as a choreographer might. Artists who create opportunities for the audience to perform the work. And artists who hide their body within the work somehow. So really, really hiding their body in the work, such as Vito Acconci, the seedbed when he was hiding under the floor and masturbating, or something that's not quite so obvious. They describe as hiding, where you're wearing a costume that completely envelops the body.
The use of the word choreography. I sadly didn't know that there was a converse recently. UT, Mississauga, I believe. But I caught a documentation of a workshop that disability academic lunchtime did that had to do precisely with the idea of like choreographing disability and asking all the participants in the room to act or to perform non-disability or ability rather. And then the second phase was now to perform disability, and they had photo documentation of I mean, it's not the same as the live performance, but it was really interesting to think about the idea of choreographing bodies as a way to think about what's actually happening performatively, I guess. I have questions, but I would like to open it up to the floor if anyone wants to jump in and ask any questions.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, in a lot of types of marginality, we certainly see performative works that are angry, that are very righteous, or that are trying to sort of shock the audience into an awareness of that person's marginal position and how wrong it is. But in both of these works, what I see is using humor and using a sort of, you catch more flies with honey kind of approach in a way. But I'm wondering if you think that has anything to do with the nature of disability, where when you're marginalized, the first thing you learn is you're alone. You have to be independent, you have to look after yourself. And thinking about my own very relatively minor on the scale forms of disability, what they constantly teach me is you need help. You've got to reach out to others. You can't do this alone. And I don't know if there's a relationship between those two things in terms of your approach to thinking about how one performs disability or not.
I'm not an angry person, and it's difficult for me to perform anger in my life, let alone in my performance work. And so that it's just a natural impulse for me not to be angry, but also my relative level of privilege means that as much as I recognize where I'm on the margins, I'm also constantly reminded that I'm situated very much in the center, as a person whose disability is mostly invisible as a white woman from a Western society. I can't go around pretending to be capital O oppressed, even while I want to acknowledge and represent my marginality.
Vanessa, did you have anything?
Yeah. I think that in the process of developing this work, I kind of went to a bunch of different places, and I think part of using humor is sometimes more fun and makes it more the actual performing for me more enjoyable, and brings a kind of it lets me bring a certain kind of energy to talking about what, at least for me, is sometimes a difficult subject. And I think that also thinking about in terms of a canon of feminist artwork, that the subject of menstruation in the female body is a very common one and has been talked about a lot, and I wanted to I felt that doing it, of all the things I tried, talking about it with humor felt the most comfortable and the most interesting, and gave audience a kind of a space where it felt like it was okay to acknowledge that the humor in the situation and the awkwardness in the situation, and creating a kind of space where we can both kind of laugh together. Felt good.
I think humor also sort of lulls the audience into a sense of complacency and comfort, at which point suddenly we say together like, oh, this is actually really difficult. We're talking about something really difficult, and we managed to get here without a lot of trouble. So let's talk, let's do something while we're in this space. For me, anger is powerful, and I love experiencing some angry work, but it also shuts down conversation, and the work to me is so much about conversation, so much of the time.
I also think humor is like a powerful legitimizer too. Thinking about what you said about your conception of disability on a basic level to be about a body in need, though very much that is true, how it's that thinking, we are made to think of that need as individual and subjective, as opposed to that need actually being an orchestrated failure of systemic barriers. And as we see categories in grant funding that acknowledge marginalization while also not taking responsibility for marginalization, I think humor, in that way, can be a tool, sometimes the only tool, to kind of talk about what's going on without talking about what's going on. That's it. Anyone else?
What if anger's part of your disability?
Sorry,
What if anger, I'm an angry person, not always, but it's part of depression and it's part of anxiety. So I don't really see it as an issue with the comments, but
Oh yeah, to be sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
well, I feel like anger is really marginalized, especially for women performance artists. Yes. It's part of my symptomology. So I don't necessarily see it as a negative thing. Sometimes it happens, actually, even in panels where I forgot to take a medication that morning, that's not going to be a good scene. And then I feel guilty that I communicated in that way, and there's all this stuff around anger, right? Even though early feminism really worked with anger a lot, and we're supposed to kind of, I haven't really formulated this thought, but I'm just kind of wondering if anyone else has anger experiences in their work. So what do you think about numbers?
I think it depends the context specific, but I know in this community of art, not limited to art, but it's say when we in conversations around tone pieces, which happens a lot when we're dealing with identity, I find as a black queer woman often before I even open my mouth, there's anger projected often onto me, and how people engage or negotiate, and even if it's a dialectic or a debate, that I notice doesn't happen necessarily. And I don't think it's a thing that people consciously think about when we engage. It's just we internalize so much, and it is that intersection of disability and race and sizes and class and all these things. And I think we're all working to undo it. But I think I do use it. Material for me can be a lot of things. It can be actual physical objects I'm using, but it can also be really trenches rage, for sure. And part of that is in the conversation with feminism, but I think some of it's even tied to my history. It's from my ancestors and
be angry about some shit. So yes, it's there, and it has to be there to get the message around. But I always get, oh, you're so nice. I think it's, like I said, there's some art form that has to be there to.
Yeah. I just wanted to be clear that anger for me, it's not something I can draw on easily because I'm not an angry person, but that's just my practice, and it doesn't mean that I believe that anger is unproductive or unimportant. I know that it's a very important material in art. I have an extremely debilitating fear of abandonment, and so anger will never be something that I can draw on because I'm worried that people will not respond well. And that's, I think, based in the same kinds of anxiety and depression. And it comes kind of from the same place, this inability to access anger.
Yeah, I feel like we have to develop the tools to not respond to anger as a personal front when people are angry at panels or discussions. Because, yeah, there can be all kinds of reasons, and there's reason for it. Like, it's been like 20 years that I've been working in disability arts, and there's been a lot of discrimination. It's great we're having this conversation today, but you know, it hasn't always been that nice that we were invited into a room, you know. So I think we need to acknowledge that and be angry about it. But you know, I'm trying to move on, and I'm really excited about the future. And sometimes I'm just like, how can we be here and this is possible? And it's incredible, actually, from what I've known in the past.
Yeah, just on the issue of anger, I think to me it is an important issue, but Cindy, I would actually question your comments that you're not an angry person. And you know I love you. But if we look at your Facebook comments, there's definitely a very potent slow burn in gee thanks, hashtag same day, that I think is a different kind of anger. I don't think anger is only like smashing things and screaming at the top of our lungs. There are other kinds of anger that are very potent and that can be mixed with humor that I think we see in the humor that both of you bring to your work.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for recognizing that. I think, like a fully fleshed human with a range of emotions. Yeah, I believe myself to be a human. I do experience anger, but I also am really careful about how it comes out and is presented, and when it does, it's through humor, or it's apologetic, or it's quiet. I guess I should have said I'm not an angry person. I don't make angry art in that way.
I think it's interesting what different identities have been brought up in terms of like the ability to access anger, and I think like with identities with traumatized histories and presences, I think the I don't know, the learned behavior of stealthy anger or coded language around anger, which manifests in like various, you know, hashtag annals on the internet now, like people seeking out shared identities with folks in order to find little pockets to more safely express anger is something like born out of a fear of exile, which I see as like innately connected to like to sustain access to like survival, I guess. But yeah, I feel similar to you, like the fear of acting on anger. Like I feel like to do so performatively or on the internet in like snide comments versus to do so with vulnerability is just not something that I particularly appreciate. Anyone else?
like the idea that you said there's all these tools to conceal or like press the menstruation to be productive, but like menstruation is a symbol of like a reproductive system, right? And it's also can be seen as a failed pregnancy, right? It's the symbol that you're not reproducing, a child. So like you better be producing something else, right? So I think there's these kind of parallel ideas of what a like female body should be producing, and what the kind of value is of a female body. So when I think about adding this product or whatever product it is, right? It's like if you're not producing a child, then you can add to our economy by spending money, and that way you're kind of atoning or making yourself more valuable in a capitalist society, because you're spending your money and you're participating in the economy and you're going to work.
It just makes me think of naming where these stereotypes come from, because I think a lot of it is through media, about the slender, the skinny body as being the norm, the thing that we aspire to have all these products that is a huge commercial interest to sell you these products to hide, the menstruating body. So I just wanted to bring that up just as part of the conversation.
Well, I'm 60. I don't deal with that, and I party all the time. I'm happy. And I save a lot of money. So, they should be free. Just like condoms. I think they should be free. You guys get free. We should get free. Well, I don't need that. But you guys get free.
Yeah, because as much as it's, I have fun doing this performance, like the heels aren't comfortable and, people experience everything differently, but I am not particularly comfortable when my pants are really wet. So I enjoy the conversation and the comment, but I'm not necessarily advocating for bloody pants everywhere.
Any other questions?
I'm just wondering maybe how the institution has supported you, or you feel like there's been a lack of support, or what could be done better. Like recently, the Canada Council's added the box. I used to make my own box, which is great. That's just, it's just like, and I feel like that's okay, because if you have a mental illness, I don't even know what to write in that section, because I don't think anything I need to kind of think is legitimate in terms of support. So, just wondering about in terms of work as an artist.
Now that there's funding for disabled artists specifically through the Canada Council, we're in that sort of catch-22. It's great that there's funding specifically for people who self-identify, but once you've self-identified, then you're shoehorned into that category, just like all of the other categories at the Canada Council that you can self-identify as in order to jump through the hoop and get this special funding, but also therefore have to be marginalized in that way. I received one of the grants from the very first deadline from the new disability office or whatever they're trying not to call it at the Canada Council. Council, and it's the first time I've been quite marginalized in that specific way through a funding agency, and it's a little weird. I've never before experienced barriers to entry really explicitly as a person who has disabilities, and it's partly because my disability is so invisible. I normally don't necessarily out myself, but I'm a person who lives with multiple sclerosis, and so sometimes that disability is extremely visible, and sometimes it's completely invisible. But I think, like a lot of us with marked identities, we're left wondering how much of the time we are kept out of things that we can't know. When we see other people achieving things, receiving things. I think as a person with a fat body, I know that I'm left out of things a lot of the time, and I also know that there's a lot of art that's made inaccessible to me. There's been a pretty popular walking art movement over the last 10 years that I normally sort of stay back from, which I think there's some really great people doing it and making some really fabulous work that I think also often fails to address its own inaccessibility and its own impulse to productivity. And I think I'd like to see more people and more festivals, more institutions challenge the impulse to productivity and see where that could go.
Sorry, it's like maybe a bit of attention. I just have a very related question. Do you know is the funding through the County Council only available to individual artists, or is it also available to organizations? And I ask the question because as a arts organizer in Canada, at ARCO in the fall when we were there, one of the issues around accessibility that came up was organizations having lack of funds to be able to either make their spaces accessible or to be able to hire the professional staff with whom we need to work to make our events accessible, which are a kind of major expense. And this is a particular challenge in performance practices where you need the physical bodies of the artists to come to manifest the work. And so if an artist, for instance, needs to have assistance with mobility or needs to have a shadow or a care worker working with them to facilitate their participation, this becomes something that, because of the limited budgets and a lot of cultural organizations, in particular performance disciplines, becomes quite a big obstacle and leads to a lot of really interesting artists and practices just really not making it into the programming. And so I just have I know it's a technical question and you may not answer, but because you both seem to have seen the grants, I'm wondering if this is being relegated to the individual artists, which also then it's interesting because it puts the responsibility on the artist to self-identify. And I think that this is really a organizational or institutional responsibility also to look at how we can better support artists of various abilities and also disabilities. And the financial obstacle ends up being, unfortunately, the one. And I do think, again, it's particularly relevant in the realm of performance where the artist can't just put the work in a crate and ship it. It really is dependent on the physical presence of the artist.
To answer your question, both the Canada Council and the Ontario Arts Council have funding allocated to individual artists as well as organizationally. And then within those funding pockets, there's both funding for the project that's being proposed or the travel that's being proposed, as well as a separate category of additional funding. I believe, let's say, with the travel grants, it goes up to something like $2,500. There's, I believe, an additional $2,500 that can be accessed so that the artist isn't using any of their funding around access and stuff. However, there are some sticky issues around specifically, I know less specifics about the Canada Council, but I know that the Ontario Arts Council, sorry, the Ontario Arts Council organizational grants. I was working on a project with Paperhouse Studio last year. We tried to apply for a specific grant for disability and unfortunately didn't qualify because, and I don't know if they've since changed the policy, but the policy stipulated that in order to be a legitimate application for disability arts, they had to prove a certain percentage of different kinds of disability, which felt not only really circus-like, just this like performance of who's on on the team, but it also for me I thought well that adds a layer of complexity depending on the organization or company that's applying, because what if the identity being focused on isn't disability, but disability is of interest to include as well, because folks have various layers of different marginalized identities and what have you, and so despite wanting to center a disabled experience in this, it was a Zoom making workshop for youth, because we couldn't prove that we had I think it was something like 65% of participants identify as DCHF or disabled, we didn't qualify. And so there's I don't know, I find that really frustrating, in terms of how many artists, websites, and organizations are desperate to include disability art, deaf arts, and those artists, but how a lot of struggle is tied up in bureaucracy, which just doesn't make sense around how to include access, unless it's 100% disabled people doing disabled art, it's not going to get that kind of program funding. But yeah.
So Jess, I'm sorry to interrupt, it's 2:00 and this happens every time. We have to wrap things up just when the discussion's getting interesting. So, I don't know if you want to have any closing remarks or...
I just wanted to thank both of you for being part of this conversation. A lot of really rich ideas were shared, and I'm looking forward to your performance, Sophie. I don't know if you guys have any closing. No?
I'll just, if we want to continue a discussion about disability arts, myself and Lindsay Fisher have curated a show at the Oshawa Art Gallery. We're going to have some people speaking there tomorrow, and there's a bus that'll leave 401 Richmond if you want to hop on there to help access get out. And the bus can accommodate wheelchairs if needed.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you all for coming.